अस्सलाम वालेकुम डियर स्टूडेंट्स, आज हम हाजिर हुए हैं एक और यूनिट लेकर, यूनिट 2 फ्रॉम योर टेक्स्ट बुक टॉकिंग अबाउट हेल्थ। जिस तरह हमने यूनिट 1 में बात की शॉपिंग के बारे में, इसी तरह यूनिट 2 आपको हेल्थ के बारे में बात करना सिखाएगी। यू विल लर्न हाउ टू टॉक अबाउट हेल्थ। In your book, there are dialogues and there are exercises based on them that are going to teach you how is it that we talk about health. इन प्रोग्राम्स में आप अपने यूनिट के कुछ उन आइटम्स को देखेंगे, कुछ उन क्वेश्चंस और कुछ नए कॉन्सेप्ट्स को सीखेंगे जो इस यूनिट को समझने और एक्सरसाइजेस को सॉल्व करने में आपकी हेल्प करें। पहला कॉन्सेप्ट जो कि आपकी किताब में मौजूद है वो है हाउ टू मेक सजेशंस। Making suggestions is a very important part of our lives and our conversations. पहली तो ज़रूरत है ये समझने की कि suggestions क्या होते हैं। Suggestions वो opinions होते हैं। Suggestions वो opinion, वो राय है जो आप लोगों को मुख्तलिफ हवालों से देते हैं। हो सकता है कि आप कुछ लोगों को healthy eating के बारे में suggestion दें। हो सकता है जब कोई आपसे अपनी सेहत की शिकायत करे तो आप उसे कोई ऐसा मशवरा दें जो उसकी सेहत को बेहतर बनाने में उसकी मदद कर सके। सो सजेशंस आर ऑल दोज ओपिनियंस। सजेशंस वो तमाम मशवरे हैं जो हम लोगों को अक्सर औकात और मुख्तलिफ मौक़े पे देते हैं। इन इंग्लिश लैंग्वेज देयर इज़ अ स्पेशल स्ट्रक्चर टू मेक सजेशंस। सजेशंस देने के लिए हम एक ख़ास किस्म का स्ट्रक्चर यूज़ करते हैं इंग्लिश लैंग्वेज में। आइए देखते हैं कि वो कौन से स्ट्रक्चर्स हैं जो इंग्लिश लैंग्वेज में सजेशंस देने के लिए इस्तेमाल किए जाते हैं। आप स्क्रीन पर देख सकते हैं कि सजेशंस देने के लिए हम क्वेश्चंस भी यूज़ करते हैं और स्टेटमेंट्स भी। आपको याद होगा यूनिट 1 के अंदर हमने रिक्वेस्ट के लिए, ऑफर्स के लिए और इन्विटेशंस के लिए क्वेश्चंस की फॉर्म को यूज़ किया और हमने कहा दिस इज़ वेरी इंटरेस्टिंग दैट इन सम कल्चर्स पीपल मेक रिक्वेस्ट इन अ questioning manner. Same is here that you can give suggestions to people in the form of questions. Now again, you do not need answers to these questions. These are rather given as suggestions. These are opinions and you want them to act on them. हम सजेशंस लोगों को इसलिए देते हैं ताकि उन सजेशंस पर अमल करके वो अपनी ज़िंदगी या अपने मामलात को बेहतर बना सकें। They have choices to take those suggestions, to act upon those suggestions, or sometimes they may not act upon them. लेकिन जब आप सजेशंस देते हैं तो आपका आइडिया यही होता है कि आपके मशवरे पर अमल किया जाए। एक तरीका जो सजेशन देने का है वो है why don't we do this? You can ask people this question, but this is not meant to be a question. This is rather meant to include them into something that you are giving your opinion on. You are suggesting them to take an action. आप suggest कर रहे हैं, मशवरा दे रहे हैं, opinion दे रहे हैं कि क्यों ना ऐसा किया जाए। इसके end पे आपको question mark नजर आएगा because the construction of the sentence is that of a question. Why don't we go see a doctor? Why don't we visit a doctor? अगर आपसे किसी ने अपनी हेल्थ की शिकायत की और बार बार की तो आपने उनसे कहा why don't we see a doctor? Now here you are suggesting that instead of complaining about your health, it is high time that they see a doctor. Similarly, एक और तरीका जो suggestion का है वो है shall we or shall I or shall you. Now what is happening? By shall we, again you are suggesting. By shall you can suggest people and give your opinion for them to act in a certain manner. Similarly, आपके पास है would you like to. Now when you say would you like to go there, would you like to try this, would you like to eat this, would you like to take your breakfast a little earlier, would you take this in your breakfast, would you like to skip a meal, would you like to add vitamins in your diet? Now you are making suggestions. Not that they give you answers like they say yes I would like to and then they do not act upon it, or they say no I would not like to and they continue with what they're doing. This is instead a suggestion, not a question. Similarly, another very friendly way to make suggestions is, let's do this. Now, let's with an apostrophe s is a short form of let us, L-E-T space U-S. Let's visit a doctor. Let's change our lifestyle. Let's start a walk in the evening. Now, these are suggestions. Similarly, what about? When you ask people or when you tell people, what about trying vitamins? What about trying to sleep for more than 6 hours? What about decreasing your workload? Now, these are suggestions. You are suggesting some ways for them to have a healthier lifestyle. Similarly, another way of making suggestion is how about? How about doing this? How about seeing a doctor? How about adding a walk routine in your daily pattern? Now, by how about, you are suggesting, you are giving a recommendation, you are recommending to try something. You are giving them an idea of how things can be made better. So, when you make suggestions, you use all these expressions. You say, why don't we? Shall we? Would you like to? Let's. What about? How about doing this? With how about, you use first form of verb with ing. How about doing this? How about seeing a doctor? Now, if people are giving you suggestions, you have a certain way of responding to them. Suggestions are responded to in a certain manner. Remember, I told you in the last unit, and I have just told you in this unit too, that when we make offers or we make invitations or we give suggestions or we make requests in the form of questions, they are not only meant to give answers to them. You are supposed to act upon them and give that person who is giving suggestions, give them an idea that you like their suggestion and you plan to act upon it. On the screen, you can see some ways to respond to the suggestions that people give you. You can say, yes, okay. So that means you are endorsing the suggestions they have given you. You agree with them and you plan to work on their recommendations or on their suggestions. Similarly, you can say, that's a great idea. That's a great idea. So, what does it tell the person who's giving suggestions? It tells that person that you like their suggestion and you're definitely going to act upon it. Similarly, you can say, that sounds great. Now, that again gives that person the idea that you endorse the suggestion that they have given you and you want and you would like to act upon it. Then, if you have to say no to their suggestions, there is this polite way of saying this. No, I don't think so. So if you say, how about decreasing your workload? And the other person says, no, I don't think so. It means that they do not agree with your suggestion, but they politely refuse to follow it. Then, I'm not sure about that. Again, when people respond in this manner, when they say, I'm not sure about that, they mean that though your suggestion is good, though your suggestion may work in other circumstances with other people, it may not work in their case. So they say, they're not sure about what change it will bring, or they're not sure whether it will bring the desired change or not. Again, this way of saying, I'd prefer to do something, to practice something, to decrease my workload. This is again a kind of endorsement. This is again a kind of agreement. This is again a kind of saying yes to their suggestion. So when you say, I'd prefer to, That means I'd prefer to do this. I would prefer to try this. Now, by preferring, you show that you would like to do what they're asking you to do. If you look at these responses in detail and a bit more closely, you will find certain patterns in these. इसके अंदर आपको एक चीज़ को देखना है कि जब हम एक सेंटेंस में yes या no का इस्तेमाल करते हैं, जब हम किसी भी सेंटेंस को yes या no से स्टार्ट करते हैं और रिस्पॉन्ड करते हैं टू सर्टेन सजेशन या सर्टेन आंसर, तो आप इन वर्ड्स के बाद yes या no के बाद एक कॉमा लगाते हैं and then you proceed with the rest of the statement. You can see in first and fourth suggestion that started with yes and no respectively, you can see that a comma has been put after yes and after no. Similarly, you can see the use of apostrophe in these responses. That's a great idea. That's a great idea. Now here you see an apostrophe s with that. What does apostrophe s mean? Apostrophe s has two meanings. It either means that is or it means that has. In this sentence, it means that is. That is a great idea. Similarly, in the last two sentences, you find the use of apostrophe again. I apostrophe am. I'm not sure about that. Now here, this apostrophe is used to contract, to shorten two words into one. Instead of saying I am, you say I'm. So it's a short form of I am. And with apostrophe, you have shortened this expression into I am. Apostrophe is not a comma. Some people call it a comma. It's not a comma. Comma is the one that has been used after yes and no here on the screen. Apostrophe looks like a comma, but it doesn't serve as a comma. Apostrophe जो है वो उसके different purposes हैं, जिनमें से आपने देखा कि short forms create करने के लिए भी इनको use किया गया. Similarly, I'd, I apostrophe D in the last response means I would or I had. Apostrophe D means either it means had or it means would. In this sentence, it means would because after I'd, they have used prefer. Prefer is first form of verb. In the case of would, you use first form of verb. In the case of had, you use third form of verb. So if there was preferred, अगर prefer की बजाय preferred इस्तेमाल किया जाता जो third form of verb है, तो आप had इस्तेमाल करते और सोचते कि I'd का मतलब है I had. लेकिन चूंकि यहाँ फर्स्ट फॉर्म ऑफ वर्ब यूज हुआ है प्रेफर, तो आप समझेंगे कि ये आई वुड है. आई वुड प्रेफर टू डू दिस, टू ट्राई दिस. एक बात जो बहुत अहम है वो ये कि जब अपॉस्ट्रोफी एस यूज किया जाए या अपॉस्ट्रोफी के साथ कोई भी लेटर यूज करके शॉर्टन किया जाए तो उसको उसी तरह बोला भी जाता है. You do not say in the last two sentences, you do not say you don't read it like this, I am not sure about that, or I would prefer to. You read them as I am not sure about that, I'd prefer to. So you read them as they are written. Now, dear students, after making suggestions and learning how to respond to them, now you can talk about health. You can talk about many things and many situations where people are giving suggestions to others. Many situations in your life arise where you give suggestions to people. And there are other situations where when others give suggestions to you, you respond to them. इसीलिए हमेशा suggestions को respond इस तरह किया जाए कि अगर आप उनको मान नहीं सकते, अगर आप उनको प्रैक्टिस नहीं कर सकते, तो भी सुनने वाला और वो शख्स जिसने आपको सजेशन दिया है ऐसा महसूस ना करे कि आपको उसका सजेशन बुरा लगा. इसी तरह सजेशन देते हुए भी आपको पोलाइटनेस का ध्यान रखना है. आपने सजेशंस में देखा और आपने रिस्पॉन्सेज में देखा दैट दे आर नोवेयर इम्पोलाइट, दे आर वेरी पोलाइट. जैसा कि मैंने आपको पहले भी बताया कि क्वेश्चन फॉर्म में क्वेश्चन की फॉर्म में जब कोई ऑफर की जाए या क्वेश्चन की फॉर्म में कोई रिक्वेस्ट की जाए, दे आर कंसिडर्ड पोलाइट इन सर्टेन कल्चर्स इंक्लूडिंग ब्रिटिश कल्चर एंड पाकिस्तानी कल्चर. सो जब आप क्वेश्चन की फॉर्म में सजेशन देंगे तो आप दूसरे को इस बात का हक देंगे, यू विल गिव देम अ राइट टू मे बी डिसएग्री विद यू और अग्री विद यू. इसी तरह जब आप लेट अस कहेंगे एंड व्हाई नॉट वी डू दिस, shall we do this, you are including yourself in that suggestion which will be welcome for the person whom you are giving suggestion. आपने देखा कि suggestions को कैसे दिया गया और suggestions को कैसे respond किया गया. अब चलते हैं कुछ ऐसी एक्सरसाइज की तरफ जिसमें आपको certain situations में suggestions देनी होंगी और हो सकता है कि आपको suggestions को respond भी करना पड़े. If you look at the exercise that is given in your book in Unit 2, that is exercise number 3, you have been given certain situations where you will be making suggestions to people on certain occasions. Look at the first one. I drink tap water and so I suffer from diarrhea. There is somebody who comes up with this problem and wants you to give them suggestion. So you can tell them from those suggestions and from those ways of suggesting that we have done in this video, you can tell them, would you like to try and drink cleaner water? Would you like to boil water before you drink it? Now here, or maybe you can tell them, what about trying bottled water for a few days? Now you are not only suggesting them, but you are suggesting them in a very polite manner. Similarly, if you look at the next problem, it says I smoke too many cigarettes and I have a sore throat. You say, how about decreasing the number of cigarettes you smoke in a day? Now keeping in mind that the person will not be able to stop smoking in a day, you give them a practical suggestion. Always keep in mind the suggestions have to be practical. They have to be implementable so that the person you are giving suggestions to does not mind acting on them. There is another way, a little informal way of suggesting. मैंने आपको यूनिट 1 में बताया कि फॉर्मेलिटी और इनफॉर्मेलिटी के भी कुछ रिक्वायरमेंट्स हैं. Sometimes you are making suggestions to people who are very close to you and you are very frank with them. At other times, you are making suggestions to people in more formal situations. For example, there is an expression which says, would you mind doing this? Now this is an informal way of expressing. When you say, would you mind doing that? That means that you don't want them to mind the suggestion you are giving. But this is when the situation is informal. So a person, a friend who comes to you with smoking problem can be very close to you. So you tell them, would you mind decreasing the number of cigarettes you smoke in a day? Now you are giving a practical suggestion that they can work on. There are too many mosquitoes and flies in my house. Again, you can say, let's try some spray. Let's try an anti-insect spray. How about trying the certain spray that you yourself are using maybe? You can name that spray. You can even say that you have been using the spray and why not try this spray. This will make the other person realize that the spray may help him. I have a rash on my body that is very irritating. You say, shall we see a doctor about it? Now you are giving them a suggestion that instead, again, it's a practical suggestion and it's a useful suggestion. Instead of trying out things at home and making the situation worse, you want them to do something that is helpful. Then the next situation is, my child is very weak and feels tired all the time. Now here again, since the problem is about the child and a parent wants a suggestion, you have to keep this in mind, that you have to give a suggestion that does not makes the parent angry, since the parents are really sensitive about their children. So you can say, or you can suggest, how about adding vitamins to your child's diet? And the parent might not have thought about it. He might not have this idea in his mind. So you would say, would you like to add ABC vitamins in your child's diet? What about trying ABC vitamins? I have tried these with my children and they have worked. Why don't you give them some supplement? Now these suggestions are going to satisfy the parent and give them an idea about something that they were missing on. So, dear students, always keep in mind the suggestions are not supposed to put off people. Suggestions का मकसद लोगों को टीच करना या ट्रेन करना नहीं है, लोगों के मूड को ऑफ करना नहीं है, लोगों को इंफीरियर फील कराना नहीं है, बल्कि उनको कुछ ऐसी बात याद कराना है जो शायद उस वक्त उनको याद नहीं. So, it is always important to give polite suggestions in a polite manner. Similarly, when others give you suggestions, it will not be a good idea to just refuse them or just reject them outrightly. अगर किसी के दिए हुए suggestion को आप फौरन refuse कर देंगे और reject कर देंगे, it will be hurtful to people. So it is always good to give them a polite response. You have seen the list of responses to suggestions also. You can also say, I have an idea. Why don't you do this? So they think that you are sincere with them and you take their problem very seriously. This video will help you solving other exercises which are about making suggestions and at some times responding to them. In our upcoming video, we will talk about some more language skills that will be useful in doing some other exercises in the same unit. Thank you very much.